Imagine waking up to a world where nothing seems to work. The phone you always rely on to check the weather, messages, or catch up on the news. It's dead. No internet, no emails, no social media updates. And as you fumble around, trying to figure out what's going on, you step outside to the most bizarre sight. The sky above you isn't the usual pale blue or cloudy gray, it's glowing with eerie, fiery colors that seem almost otherworldly. No, it's not some rare weather event or a strange visual phenomenon that has taken over the atmosphere. What you're seeing is the result of something far more catastrophic, a massive solar storm, the likes of which we haven't seen since the infamous Carrington Event of 1859. The source of all this chaos? A sunspot that has grown so large, so intensely active, that it's already affecting our planet. This is not some distant threat or hypothetical scenario. The sunspot in question, AR 3664, is currently one of the largest and most active sunspots we've witnessed in years. It has grown to an astonishing size, already 15 times larger than Earth itself. Imagine that, a single spot on the sun larger than our entire planet. It stretches 200,000 kilometers in length, a size that's not only jaw-dropping but also deeply concerning. The bigger the sunspot, the greater the risk it poses to our civilization. Sunspots are areas on the sun's surface where the magnetic field is particularly strong, causing solar flares and coronal mass ejections, CMEs. And when these powerful bursts of radiation and plasma are unleashed, they travel millions of miles, impacting everything in their path, including Earth. So what does AR 3664 mean for our future? Could we be facing a solar storm of such magnitude that it could plunge us back into the Dark Ages? A storm powerful enough to knock out power grids, disrupt communication networks, and cause widespread chaos across the globe? If you've ever heard of the Carrington Event, then you have a sense of what's at stake. In 1859, a solar storm so strong hit Earth that telegraph systems around the world were knocked out, some even catching fire from the electrical surges. At the time, this was considered a fluke, an extraordinary event that happened in the early days of electrical communication. But today, in our highly interconnected and technologically dependent world, such an event could have far more severe consequences. In 1859, when the Carrington Event occurred, the world was a very different place. The telegraph system, the only form of long-distance communication at the time, was paralyzed. In some places, sparks from telegraph lines set paper on fire. And while the phenomenon fascinated scientists like Richard Carrington, who was the first to link the solar flare with the effects on Earth, it was not understood as a major threat. People across the United States were confused and frightened. They saw strange auroras in the sky, which, while beautiful, were also seen as a sign of something ominous, a sign that many thought heralded the wrath of God. But what would happen if such an event occurred today? The world now depends on technology for everything. Power grids, communication networks, satellites, transportation systems, all of them rely on electricity, which in turn depends on the uninterrupted functioning of systems that can be destroyed by a powerful solar flare. Imagine a world where airplanes are grounded because their navigation systems fail. Imagine roads filled with abandoned cars that can't start because gas stations no longer function. Think about refrigerated foods spoiling within hours, banks being unable to process transactions, hospitals unable to power life-saving equipment, and communication networks going dark for weeks or even months. This isn't a far-off possibility, it's a real danger we face, and the sunspot AR 3664 is a reminder of that. AR 3664 has already demonstrated its potential power by releasing several solar flares of varying intensity. The most concerning of these are the M-class and X-class flares, which are some of the most powerful solar eruptions we can observe. While M-class flares are significant, X-class flares are much stronger, and if one of these were to hit Earth directly, the results would be catastrophic. These flares can release enormous bursts of electromagnetic radiation that can interfere with electrical systems and cause widespread damage. And while scientists can track solar activity, and space agencies like NASA are continuously monitoring the sun for signs of dangerous solar storms, predicting when or how such an event will hit Earth is incredibly difficult. The real danger is not just the immediate effects of a solar flare or CME, but the long-term consequences. A major solar storm could cripple our civilization by knocking out electrical grids and communication systems, which would take months or even years to repair. Think of the financial toll this would take. According to the National Academy of Sciences, a solar storm of the magnitude of the Carrington Event today could cause as much as $2.6 trillion in damages in the United States alone. The global economy could be plunged into chaos, with countries struggling to recover from the economic impact of such a catastrophic event. Supply chains would collapse, and societies that rely on interconnected systems would find themselves unable to function. You might be able to live without a smartphone or a computer for a few days, but what if the electricity goes out for weeks or even months? How would you survive without access to essentials like food, water, and medicine? It's a chilling thought, but the truth is that we're becoming increasingly vulnerable to such solar events. Our dependence on technology, combined with our limited understanding of the full scale of solar storms, makes us ill-prepared for the potential fallout. AR 3664 is a stark reminder of just how vulnerable we are. But it's not just the size of this sunspot that's concerning. The growing intensity of its solar flares and the likelihood of more powerful CMEs are warning signs that we can no longer ignore. In fact, solar experts have already issued alerts about the increasing risk of more powerful solar storms in the coming months. The question on everyone's mind is, how can we protect ourselves from these dangers? Can we do anything to shield ourselves from the devastating effects of a solar storm? While there's no way to stop the sun from doing what it does, scientists and engineers are working on ways to protect our infrastructure and minimize the damage. One of the key methods involves improving the resilience of power grids. Modern power grids are vulnerable to solar storms, and the current electrical infrastructure is simply not built to withstand the intense electromagnetic surges caused by CMEs. But researchers are working to develop stronger, more resilient power systems that can better cope with these solar events. Another important step is improving our satellite systems. Satellites play an essential role in global communication, weather forecasting, GPS navigation, and more. A solar storm that knocks out satellites could leave the world without essential services, bringing travel, commerce, and even national security to a halt. To counter this threat, engineers are working on developing satellites that are better protected from solar radiation. Additionally, agencies like NASA have been closely monitoring the sun for decades. The Solar Dynamics Observatory, SDO, for example, is a key tool for observing solar activity. This satellite continuously observes the sun in multiple wavelengths, providing scientists with real-time data on solar flares and CMEs, helping them to predict when a solar storm may be headed our way. These monitoring efforts, while important, may not be enough to fully protect us. The unpredictable nature of solar activity means that, despite our best efforts, a massive solar flare or CME could still catch us off guard. The good news is that with continued research and collaboration, we can begin to build more robust systems that will be better equipped to handle the challenges posed by solar storms. Governments around the world, particularly in spacefaring nations like the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada, are beginning to take the threat more seriously. International cooperation is key, as solar storms don't respect borders, and their effects can be felt on a global scale. But as individuals, we can also take steps to prepare ourselves. While it's unlikely that any of us will be able to prevent a solar storm from hitting Earth, there are things we can do to minimize the impact on our daily lives. Keeping an emergency stock of food, water, and other essential supplies is always a good idea. In the event of a solar storm, having the ability to survive without access to grocery stores or running water could be a life-saving decision. It's also important to keep a small emergency supply of cash on hand, in case electronic payment systems fail. And as a society, we must continue to support research into solar storm prevention and resilience, as well as push for stronger infrastructure that can withstand the effects of a massive solar flare. In the end, the real takeaway here is that we are living in a time when we are more connected than ever before, but also more vulnerable. The same technologies that have brought us closer together and made our lives more convenient are also the ones that make us incredibly dependent on electricity, satellites, and communication networks. A massive solar storm could bring all of that crashing down in an instant. But it doesn't have to be the end of the world. By understanding the risks and taking proactive steps to protect ourselves, we can mitigate the impact of such an event. The sun may be unpredictable, but our response to it doesn't have to be.